there's a quote that I want to be able to refer to. Um, and I started to bring the shirt, but I said, let me just pull up the quote. And
Yes.
so this is Audre Lorde. I will need to look this up because I
Sure.
want to make sure that I'm accurate.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Audre Lorde, who says, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare.
Whoa.
Miss Audre Lorde.
Risers. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. Hello, hi. How you doing?
Hi.
So here we are. I am hoping that you guys are doing well. I need you to be doing well. I know you need you, but I also need you to do well. So here we are back in the virtual building, and we're here with another conversation, this time on the topic of self-care. Oh, don't
Yes.
look away. I know it's hard. Just let us talk to you before you decide you don't want a part of the conversation. I know it's hard. I know you don't have time. I know you don't have energy. However, you never get good if you don't keep trying. That's all. I ain't starting with y'all today. I'm being good today. I'm gonna be calm and chill today. All right. So, but we'd like you to join along the conversation, listen to the conversation, and please take one or two things away that fits for your life and try it. And then you know what you gotta do, right? You gotta leave a comment. Y'all understand? I ain't gonna say that all the time. I just gonna put it on the screen somewhere to leave a comment. We appreciate you guys so much for listening in, and we definitely want to grow not only our subscribers, but we want engagement more than anything else. So we thank you for the love you've given thus far, and we're asking you to double and triple that, because if you stay for the journey, it will be worth it. Miss Sounds is
Mhm.
in the building.
Hey y'all. Hey y'all. Hey y'all. I'm here. Miss Sounds here, yo.
I'm telling you, and we have Miss Liz Phillips in the house. Say hi to the people, Miss Liz.
Well, hello. Hello.
That's how
Good
you do.
day. Good day. Bon dia.
Yeah.
Woo!
Oh,
Yes.
see that? Languages,
There you
languages.
go.
So listen, before we get to know Miss Liz and why she's here and why she wants to talk to us about self-care, we're going to have Miss Sounds bring us the word of the day. As you guys know, it's a staple. We do the word
Yeah.
of the day. That's just what we do. So
Yes.
be gracious, listen, and tell us, what did you learn from the word of the day after you hear us talk about it in our round robin? We want to know, did we miss a point of view, a
Mhm.
reflection, an inflection on the word of the day? Hey, teach us. We're open. We
Hmm.
out here and we're open to learn. What did you learn? So, Miss Sounds, take us to the word of the day.
Absolutely. Well, again, welcome, Liz, to the podcast. This is what we like to do to open up, just to, warm up the palate a little bit, because we're going to be talking a lot. That's one thing we're going to do on
Sure,
here, talk a
sure.
lot. So I'm going to read a quote that feels like it would impact each of us in this moment. And I am going to just read it, have everybody go around and talk about what it means to them in this moment right now. So the quote is: there is no such thing as failure. Failure is just life trying to move us in another direction. And that's by Oprah Winfrey.
Hmm. All right.
Yeah. What do you think,
So
Liz?
you laid that on me. And my initial thought was, well, failure is all about lessons. So if anything, you may have heard this thought about being redirected. And for me, I think about any lessons learned are ways for me to be able to reflect in terms of what steps do I need to take,
Mm,
right? Things that are
Mm,
propelling me, that are carrying me forward. If I
mm,
reflect too long, and I tend to not want to frame it as failure because I can get stuck there. right? And start overthinking like, oh, I should have, shoulda, coulda. But I do like the sense that it is this journey. And so, I've had some detours. Don't get me wrong. I've
Yeah.
had some rest stops, but I'm moving on. I'm pressing on. So that's what
Mm,
comes to my mind. Failure
that's
is
beautiful.
lessons and it's allowing me to move forward.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a faith route on this one, just because that's what's
Mhm.
really speaking to me right now.
Yeah.
Um, in my Christian faith, I believe in that life is actually something instituted. Then I believe death is eventual, but then I also believe in life again. And
Mhm.
so I think that this kind of process of death, then resurrection is kind of speaking to this idea of, living life, failing, but then being redirected to live again. So I think that failure for me is framed in this aspect of I have an opportunity to live again. I have an opportunity to make different decisions. I
Mhm.
have an opportunity as someone that was not the same person before I failed. I'm not the same person after I failed as I was before. And so I have opportunity to make different choices, see the world differently, and walk on a path towards more life.
I'm
Here's to
supposed to
life.
follow that.
Yo.
What happens if you're still thinking? Is that allowed? Those were so good that I stopped thinking about what I was supposed to. Oh my
It's there. It's there.
God. I'm gonna take a little shallow because I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I would say I struggled so much with this concept of failure
Mm.
when I was seeking perfection. All right, so if I have to follow what these wonderful ladies have said, as I'm still thinking and processing, I would say that failure has always been a difficult thing for me to find positivity in because I was groomed to do things perfectly or I had no self-worth.
Mm.
And I married that thing, that idea, that ideology. I married it. So when I hear this quote in my now state, in my new journey, I would say that I've learned to accept failure as not a never, but a not now. And it
Hmm.
seems to be for me the only catalyst that allows me to pause long enough to see that it is not that something is being taken away from me as a punishment and that's why I fail, but it's something that's being put on pause for my safety so that I can
Mhm.
succeed. That's the
Hmm.
best I can say. I don't know how
Yeah.
to it.
No, that
I
was
love
great.
that. I love that because it is this notion, right, of we are all, I believe, informed. And for me, like no experiences are wasted.
Yeah.
No experiences are wasted. But that notion of being protected, right, or being redirected, that speaks promise, that speaks life.
Yeah.
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 No, I'm glad to be there. I won't say that I don't have moments to try to throw me backwards into not being there, but every day when I set my mind on remembering that that lesson can always serve me, it brings me back to that medium of balance. And so
Yeah.
I hold on to that very tightly because I need to remember the positive so I don't go backwards in that thing of saying, okay, well, I failed. And of course, right now, today, one of the ways that that shows up easily from my personality type is if I have 10 things on my list and I get five done, I failed. Miss Sounds talked to me about that. She was like, excuse me, did you
Oh,
realize that you just did
yes.
five big things off your list? And I'm like, that was not enough because I got up at five and I wanted to go all the way to 10. And so that means 10 things. And she's looking at me like, well, gratitude and breathing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you need someone
And
like that, right?
appreciating where you are. Like
Yes. Yes.
there is something about that. There's some tension I feel between failure and perfectionism. And I want to be able to say it's trying to strike a balance,
Yeah.
but I don't know that we give ourselves permission or even give ourselves credit. Because there's perhaps I can relate to a need to continue to achieve or be this overachiever.
Mm-hmm.
So I set these goals, or you set this, high expectation, and then when you meet it, then now you got to go higher, right?
Yeah.
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 That
It
can be
does
I,
become a
tiring.
drug, Miss Liz. Oh my gosh, I
yeah.
forgot about that part of it. You're right. Because I think it's easier in society for us to talk about someone being addicted to a substance, someone being addicted to a person and things of that nature. But you're right. We can have an addiction to being the overachiever all the time. And
Yeah.
that's still a prisoner mentality. I'm sorry. Been there, done that, don't want to go back because I couldn't enjoy the smallest thing in life. I was like, oh, you want us to go for ice cream? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
You do. I don't have no time for ice cream. And my friend's like, chill
You
out.
sure? You sure?
There's not a rebellion. It's just ice cream. It's 5 minutes down the street. You have time for ice cream.
Yeah. And I could speak to the overachiever, just that lifestyle. That's just how I was raised in general to be that way. But I think that there's messages you receive about what rest is and what enjoyment is. And oftentimes, as an overachiever, that feels like a cop out or laziness.
Mm.
And great that we're having a conversation about care today,
I want to
because
tell you,
I
no,
know
no
you could tell
accident.
us.
No accident. But there is that tension of again wanting to, as the young folk will say, you're doing the most or you're being extra. And I'm like, no, there's a certain way that I want to be able to have, this event or this particular, dinner to look like. And so there's a vision. So
Yeah.
I don't want to squash or hamper anybody's, vision or ambition, but I'm learning to give myself permission. And with that, sometimes it is just being able to take a step back
Yeah.
and appreciate and to slow down. That does
Mm,
not mean that we are not going to have or enjoy the finer things,
Yes.
or as they say, enjoy that moment, indulge. It's just being able to kind of slow things down. And I guess it's kind of what brought me in this space and speaking with you all. So if I may, I'll just,
Please
share.
jump in.
Um, there's a quote that I want to be able to refer to. Um, and I started to bring the shirt, but I said, let me just pull up the quote. And
Yes.
so this is Audre Lorde. I will need to look this up because I
Sure.
want to make sure that I'm accurate.
Yes.
yeah.
And Audre Lorde, who says, caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare.
Whoa.
Miss Audre Lorde.
Mm,
So when I refer to this quote, and then when I think about the statement self-care, I often wonder what pops up for you.
Hmm.
mm,
Self-clear. I slow down. That I'm just gonna be real. That's a big one. Cause
yeah.
I kind of get mad when you're gonna tell me slow down because so much has been put in boundary from me from so long. I mean, I just, I was the late
Mm,
bloomer. I was the one who got the last set of freedom. And by the time I got, I was too scared to even do all the stuff I had imagined I was going to do, which was good. That was God's barrier,
hmm
right? I didn't do all the stuff that everybody was doing, but it's a slowdown for me. Before that slowdown used to be annoying. I'm at 50-50. I'm not fully balanced on it. I'm at 50-50
Mhm.
now, where when I hear the slow down, I know I've been running and running and running and running, producing and producing and producing. Where before you tell me slow down, I'm angry the whole time. Like I feel that you've disrespected me. You don't know where I'm coming from. Don't put me on pause.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
I'm hearing you that self-care, you translate that into slowing down or someone perhaps like, trying to put the brakes on you a
Yes,
bit.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
And for you, Miss Sounds,
For me,
self-care.
I've been on this journey as of lately, just with my understanding of self-care, it being grounded in empathy and self-compassion. So I have previously uh, had a very negative inner critic, and someone I was very hard on myself. Azali will even tell you that I put myself on punishment to the extent like they don't open the door and I'm still in the punishment seat. And I've been on this path to freedom by loving myself and speaking tenderly to myself and being gentle to myself.
You just gave a big hug right there.
Yeah.
That was a big hug. And so interesting hearing from both of you. This is actually helping to just inform that it's been an evolution because for me, self-care, I took that as that meant a luxury. I took it as something that I might do, once in a blue moon. And so I'm here to tell you that for me, this version of Liz, I'm experiencing self-care in ways that I'm realizing all of us aren't necessarily in the same in the same place. We don't have to access it or we don't have to experience it the same way.
Mm.
But I wonder if I thought about self-care 10 years ago, I would have thought that, okay, that requires a certain amount of money,
Mm.
or self-care would have to look a certain way that might be taking this big trip. But today, my self-care journey can be me spending my time in the garden. It
Yeah.
could be me
Mm,
taking those 3 minutes, and I needed to do a little bit of sitting and just a little bit of breath work, or
yeah.
5 minutes out in the sun. So for me, it's this evolution that self-care, I want folks to consider it and see themselves as being able to access it. And I feel like sometimes I'm probably going to have to not just model it for my loved ones or continue to model it for friends, but I also wonder why there is resistance of
Mm,
care.
Well,
mm,
I would say for me, resistance was there because the women around me didn't show that, or they didn't show it in a way that I could immediately translate that they were telling me to take care of myself or those around me, right? Coming from the Caribbean background, you're reared to take care of the home at a very, very young age. And
Mhm.
so that is a side that you get more dominantly than anything else, right? Be educated, be smart, but marry, have children, run the home.
yeah.
Period. Full stop. so,
Mhm.
so this thing of self care, not only was that word not said out loud, it wasn't modeled in a way that you could pick up that you must infuse that as well, right? What it was education, domestic homemaker. Um, there you go. You know what I mean?
Layers on top of layers on top of layers. I'm hearing the responsibilities.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
would
what was
say,
given to them, right? So I
yeah.
mean, I can't say this didn't know I should have. And
Yeah.
maybe that's why it was such a foreign entity when I came to America. And then I'm like, well, everybody here is spoiled. They lazy. They're not getting up and doing stuff like because again, I couldn't miss what I never had. So then I come here and I have a more critical outlook because I was like, well, work just a little bit so I can feel comfortable. Like I'm not
Mhm.
actually
Yeah.
going to the extremity of what I came from. So self-care still was a very strange thing for many years and only made itself appealing when I met Black women who were eloquent in speech, who dressed beautifully, who ran their homes and still said, but I'm gonna need you to take care of you, baby.
Mhm.
I'm gonna need you to slow down. I'm gonna need you. And just watching them, you were just like, yeah, I need to have that flow. So I'm going to listen. But that was
Yeah.
many years later. So sorry, Miss Sounds, for interjecting, but I
No,
don't remember I had that thought. You just brought that up, Miss Liz. But I struggled with it. I'm not gonna lie. So Miss Sounds.
I was gonna hop right on that point. From my perspective, kind of what Azali was saying, for me, it's been a cultural value, a cultural value, not self-care, but a cultural value to be exhausted as a woman in from African culture. Exhaustion
Yeah.
and yelling at your family because you're exhausted
Yeah.
was like a badge of honor, was something to say that you are running this house well and you are this woman that is to be revered and respected. And so for me, it was like external validation meant more than checking in with me. Right. And so I always, if I perform this, if I live out this life, it's for everyone else. And so in doing it for everyone else, I don't look at myself often. Um, that has changed now, but I'm just saying like that was my foundation, which was that the culture says to be a woman is to forget about yourself and to be applauded because you forgot about yourself.
So the responsibilities and the sacrifice, and you both brought in this other aspect in terms of culture. So it made me actually want to. Um, I don't want to just limit this in terms of like that there's resistance. It could be also a matter of just exposure, right? Or even awareness. It's a concept, and it's not something that, I can say that I grew up with, but it's something that I firmly believe in now. And I think for me, my parents being of a certain age, they were, I would say, the builder generation,
Mm-hmm.
right? They experienced a bit of the depression. And so they had deep values in terms of their work ethic and raising a family and also both being ministers. So there was lots and community, organizers. So there was a lot of attention, a lot of energy about giving to others.
Mm.
And if anything, I think one of the lessons that I picked up on is in terms of how my dad retired and uh, my mother, in terms of how she also lived her life mission. So they had two different paths. My dad actually retired from the ministry, and I've always been a fan of or fond of saying, I want to retire as dad does, able to enjoy time on the porch, able to, enjoy if he was researching or doing some other writing. Whereas for my mother, it felt like her oxygen was tied to her mission,
Mm.
and a lot of her identity was driven by work,
Yeah.
although she wouldn't use the word that it's work because it's a calling. And I think for me, part of this has been trying to tease out where I felt I was able to introduce self-care to her. And in terms of trying to create a space where there would be those moments where I would encourage her to, let's step away, let's slow it down. And I think some of that for me also helped to inform what it meant for me to say that there are moments where we want to, I'm having a moment with this one here.
It's okay. A moment is to be had. We will be patient and we will wait.
Mhm.
Because I absolutely want to honor my mom. And it's also understanding, again, what her sacrifices have meant in terms of this family legacy, celebrating 1 year since her passing. And
Mm,
I am wrestling with being able to honor her life and legacy and this topic around self-care.
Yeah.
I think I'm still trying to figure it out.
mm,
Yeah. But I
mm,
Something,
think people will identify, Miss Liz, with that because First of all, our condolences on mom's passing.
Yes. Yes.
That will always be difficult, and no one can tell you how to interpret, how to guide, how to honor. That's you and God gonna do that work. Period. 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 I would say that I know I'm going to learn from you because as you speak, my son has been trying to tell me now, Mom, trust me to do this, and you just take a break. I have not been responding as positively as my brain has told me to respond because I just want to go get it done. So as you're speaking, I'm realizing that I've been dismissive of
Mm.
potentially what you were trying to get mommy to understand. So I'm gonna have to get it from me and mommy. Cause you just took me back. I literally the beginning of this week, as you're talking, I'm like, oh, I think I dismissed my kid on what you're saying.
Mm.
So when I tell you I'm with you came today to help me. Because I gotta go back and apologize today.
Mm.
I didn't mean to dismiss, but I'm acknowledging that I did.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna get it right from me and mommy because I'm missing the lesson. That's all I can say. I'm missing the lesson.
Mm.
So I am sorry.
Yeah.
So,
Tell me though, on the topic of self-care, because we hear your love and how careful you want to be with the topic so it's not overwhelming. Outside your personal shift where you said you had to give more grace or a different definition other than the luxury you introduced to this thing called self-care.
so being fully transparent, I had to think about where I was in terms of my own wellness journey.
Mm-hmm.
Thankful for my blood pressure. I know my numbers. I knew that it was important to go have screenings and the annual checkups. But I also, as Miss Sounds, tapped into that comment around compassion and self-love. I also knew that there were times in which I wasn't feeling as if I was at my optimal best.
Mm.
And so for me as a health educator, it's always been a matter of having a message that folks hopefully would feel more empowered and not feel that going to the doctor was a matter of like waiting for bad news.
Mm.
My message would be embracing wellness or embracing a healthy lifestyle one step at a time. So needed to think about how I, as a healthcare practitioner, what am I doing for myself? Because there's so many dimensions when it comes to self-care and wellness. There's an aspect in terms of my own spirituality. That's a key part of my self-care plan. And I didn't necessarily always uh, see it in that way, um, but I absolutely do. So for me, when I thought about developing the self-care plan, it's actually been something that I've been kind of slowly curating for myself and thinking about what are the ways in which I am feeding and fueling myself. So spiritually, being a part of my worship service, being involved in ministry is absolutely part of self-care. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh my goodness, no wonder that is something, why it resonates with me, why I feel that certain joy in service, being with my church family, because it's feeding me. Another aspect, and this is something, again, being able to embrace what therapy does for me. Therapy is a part of maintenance.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, have I experienced crisis? I've experienced grief. Um, but now knowing that therapy is actually a part of my wellness check-in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm,
also been something that, again, it's helped evolve my thinking and wanting to be able to say, as much as I enjoy, being with my church family, it's also important that I make sure that I'm scheduling my therapy sessions and they are right up there with my massage therapy.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And so I use that as an example. I used to think massages would happen, every 4 months, every 6 months.
Right.
And I'm now in a place where I'm like,
Mm,
once a month club. My therapist said, make sure you have a good massage therapist. And I can say that my pastor was very much advocate. It is okay to have a pastor and a therapist. And I
mhm,
think about this has been my self-care journey, right? Being able to say that these are things that are helping to make sure that I'm the best version of me.
So, what do you do, Miss Liz, if you feel a shifting within yourself that may not require the connection with the pastor or the therapist? What are you doing in sort of your day to day as you feel overwhelmed or a particular
Mm.
emotion coming or a past memory or trauma trying to come back? What are two or three things that you do with your own self, for your own self, by
Mhm.
your own self, in order to come back to ground zero so you can balance out?
Well, thank you for that question. So I have rediscovered writing.
No.
And for me, it's not so much a journal from day to day, but there's moments in which I'm able to craft a poem. Um, Another activity I find myself I mentioned in terms of being outdoors and being,
Yeah.
as they say, touch grass, literally the time that I can spend in the garden, digging, weeding, those are moments that actually help to fill me. I will say I've always had this. I've always noticed that when I'm cleaning, that's actually a way for me to kind of
Yes.
work out some energy and, love the result. But it's often, I think, a way for me to kind of both exert a bit of energy, but it allows me to kind of get out of my head. So in a way, it may not sound like self-care, but it's a practice, right? So for me, it's something that I enjoy right up there, with the gardening or with the writing. So those are some examples. I mean, for me, the self-care journey also, I think in terms of being able to spend time, whether it's coloring or whether it's baking. I mean, these may sound like hobbies or activities, but if I start to notice in terms of linking, when I'm feeling stressed and then when I turn, those end up being for me, healthy coping,
Mm.
healthy coping skills.
Yeah.
mm,
And what I try to do is then be much more intentional in terms of making sure that I'm practicing something so it becomes more of a ritual. So then that's how I translate it into self-care, if that
Yeah.
makes
mm.
sense.
I like that.
Yeah.
It sounds jumping because there's three or four things here that she mentioned that you are a huge advocate of. So I
Oh, yeah.
do your thing, do your thing.
Yes, Liz. Thank you. Thank you for bringing these things up. One of the things you said that really struck something with me is this idea that wellness is multifaceted.
Yeah.
It's not, it doesn't just look one way.
Mhm.
And we, my experience has been the prevailing kind of culture when it comes to wellness is like toxic diet culture and feeling like it needs to just be an emphasis on what you eat and physical activity, but that you kind of give the space that there's more to it than just those two
Mhm.
things.
Absolutely.
And can you talk to us about this more expansive, abundant view of wellness that really kind of, for me, what I get from the message is there's more things that matter. And it all does, right? Because we're so complex as human beings. There's so many things that form us. It all matters. So can you speak to that? It all matters. everything matters. The things that you do to really feed you matter, not just physical food.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, so there is, I mean, the literature actually suggests that there's 8 dimensions of wellness. And when I think about it, I believe there's even financial, we think in terms of financial, we spoke about the spiritual, um, and then certainly, recognizing there's things that we need to do for our physical body. But I think for me, my take on this is that it's a holistic approach. And so while people may, end up starting when thinking about, well, what is it that they can do in terms of having a more balanced outlook when it comes to nutrition? It's almost as if when you think about a stool, right? You know that there needs to be balance because if you focus just in one area, chances are we may be neglecting ourselves in another.
Sure.
And so what I find is that, we're wanting to, ensure that we have opportunities at least to be able to kind of, have a bit of a check-in. So for myself, there was a period in which I was more active in terms of taking walks, ensuring I was getting some physical movement. But I also realized that I was feeling some other emotional drain. And so for a time, I was focusing on trying to, get to the root of, what my of some of those stressors. And so I guess for me, what I notice is that there can be times in which, going back to, beating myself up in terms of saying, well, I'm not doing enough movement. I know better. I know I just need to take 15 minutes outside. But I have to just allow myself to say, that's not something that I can do right now. Um, it's kind of like giving that bit of compassion to being able to say, you know what, for right now, I am the best I can do. I want to ensure that I'm having my, 2 or 3 glasses of water, right?
Mhm.
May not have been able to go out and get that 15-minute walk in or had the best meal. Um, but I stayed hydrated. So, I mean, that to me is just a bit of my own Friday
Yeah.
confession.
I just
Yeah.
want to know, did y'all meet up before the podcast? Because you sound a lot like somebody.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't it, Miss Sounds? Tell them I'm not making it
Yes,
up.
it's scary. Yes.
Really?
So that you guys know, they did not speak prior to this moment. Okay. I like to let y'all know that when we said organic, oh, we ain't changed
True
that. We changed
story.
some bad things about us, but we did not change that organic
True
conversation
story. True story.
because you guys sound, I'm promising you,
Yeah.
very, very similar. So guess what? I'm gonna stop the conversation here because there is a part 2, and apparently I'm supposed to be inviting you guys on each of these videos to like, share, subscribe, and comment. So that's what we're gonna do here. This is where we're gonna put our pause, break, praise, break, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus, all of that. You know what I'm saying? Get your water, touch up your makeup, and come back, whether we can see you or not. You can pretend like we can. All right, you can see,
Right.
you can pretend it's a whole thing. So, but we're gonna put a pause here because we have to get to part 2. So you got to come back. I'm gonna wait. Did you hit subscribe? It's on your screen. Mm-hmm. Oh, you did. Thank you. See y'all in part 2, risers. We'll be back, and you should be too.